Hi everyone, it's Cozy and welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to be building in the world of San Myshuno, and this is the world that came with the expansion pack City Living. The lot that I'm currently working on is called Midtown Meadows, which was actually originally classed as a Central Park lot. So this lot is normally not accessible for building, however you can use a specific cheat to be able to build on this lot. If you open your cheat box using the Control Shift and C on PC and type in bb.enable free build, you'll be able to delete whatever is currently built on this lot and then rebuild whatever you like. Sometimes this cheat works without enabling testing cheats, but if you have trouble, try typing in testing cheats on and then return to the cheat menu and typing in the first cheat that I mentioned. I'll put a link to Carl's guide for a variety of different cheat codes and also lots of guides to help you with playing The Sims 4 and other games. So speaking more about the build, as you can see, I've leveled out the terrain to different heights using the terrain tools, and I've created the lowest area of the lot in the center, and this will be the main hub area of the park. This is where you'll typically find your seating areas, fountains, chess tables, and other kind of activities. Speaking of activities, you'll notice as I'm building this up as we go through the video that I'm trying to fit in as many activities as I can into this lot while trying to make it look as realistic as possible. I sometimes find that with EA's original lots, especially ones in packs that have been around for a few years now, that they're quite sparse, and I do find my staff struggling to bring my Sims to these lots, and it's rare that I'll ever spend more than a couple of Sim hours here. There aren't really many activities for you to do and to keep your Sims entertained, especially if you visited these lots quite a few times. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I fit as many activities in here as I could. So just speaking about what I've built so far, so you can see there's that big fountain in the middle, which is normally the centerpiece of the majority of parks. I also popped in a little coffee stand along with some nice little tables and chairs for your Sims to sit at, and there's also a few chess tables dotted around that area as well. I will pop back later in the video just to add in a few more bits and pieces to fill that area out. As you can see, I've now moved on to this gazebo type area. So the idea of this area is to actually sort of replicate that debug item that you can just see on the left hand side of the screen there. I wanted to create this gazebo area as a nice little area for your Sims to potentially get married, or if you wanted to, if you downloaded this lot, you could change this into whatever you like. You could have a little music center in here, you could have some normal seating area, you could make it into a little area for your children to watch a movie on one of the big projector screens. It's completely up to you what you want to do here. So I'm just popping these string lights just around the outside, just to give it a little bit of atmosphere just as the sun starts to set. And that does mean that when your Sims visit in the evenings, if they decide to, this area won't be shrouded too much in darkness. So this could actually be a perfect spot for your Sims to potentially get engaged, or even just to do a quick marriage if they wanted to. So moving on to the center of the park, I'm just placing these planters around the edges of each of the paths leading into the center. So again, these planters are actually debug items. So there is a separate debug menu which you can access lots of different items that aren't available in the normal Sims catalogue, and again there is actually a cheat that's used for that, which will be listed in the description of my video and also on the link for the Carl's Guide website. So just adding in a few more bits and pieces and decorations here. I've added some nice little umbrellas to the tables just to provide a little bit of shade for your Sims if they're sitting there, and I've also used a little bit of differentiation there with some of the umbrellas being closed and some of them being open, and also a little sign there pointing towards that little coffee area. So moving on to the first quarter of the park, this area is going to be covered in a nice lake for your Sims to have a look over, and also they'll be able to fish in this area as well. I forgot to mention that this park is actually based on a central park from the Sims 3 game. I'm using that as a reference for the 4 different quarters of the park, and one of the areas is covered in a lake in the original park. I'll pop a picture up on the screen now so you can take a look at that and you can see what I'm talking about if you haven't played the Sims 3 before. So just quickly moving back on to what's happening with this build, I've created the terrain levels for this pond and placed the water in. Pond tools are actually a relatively new feature in The Sims 4, and I believe it actually came alongside The Sims 4 Country Living in a free patch update, and it's been great being able to create this pond directly into the ground. Previously, I used to have to use pools to create ponds, and then you had to decorate around the edge with lots of foliage and rocks to make it look as though it was part of the lot, and honestly it was so fiddly to do, trying to get everything in the right place, and sometimes you had to use the move objects on sheet, and if you didn't download the lot with that cheat used, it would just completely mess everything up. So it's great having ponds into the game now. So as you can see, I've just now added a little terrain paint around the outside edge of the pond, just to give a little bit of differentiation from what would be the muddy area of the pond bank and the grass, adding in lots of trees and other foliage to bring this area together and just make it a nice area for your Sims to relax around, really. I've also added in some fish spawners and a couple of duck and swan spawners as well. I actually believe I ended up taking the swans out, unfortunately, as it was a little bit crowded. So as you can see, I've just moved on back onto this gazebo area now, and I've actually decided to pop in a little wedding area. So the majority of these items are from the My Wedding Stories pack, which you can purchase and download and add all these different items into your game. So moving on now to the third quarter of the park, you can see that I started putting together a children's park for your sim children to play on. So because I've had to change this lot from the special lot type of a central park and changing it to just a normal park, there are a specific set of gameplay objects that I'll need to add in, so this lot will be classed as correct by the game. Those items mostly include children's play equipment, seating areas, chess tables, grills, and also a toilet and a sink. So as you can see, I've just popped in a few different items for your Sims children to play on. There's a climbing frame, a pirate ship play area, swings, and also a couple of toddler slides as well, so your toddlers don't feel too left out. So just a quick disclaimer, just as I move on with some of the foliage and other items here, due to this lot being what EA has called a specialised lot, it's very rare that you'll actually get any Sims visit this lot, as it's basically what is classed as a generic lot. So what this means is that a generic lot has no requirements for building, which for builders is probably a blessing, as you aren't restricted by what items you need to use on this lot for it to be classed as working. However, this also means there is very little coding in the game for this lot, and therefore you only attract a couple of Sims. Obviously for immersion purposes this is a little bit of a bummer, as you won't have much of an atmosphere here unless you invite multiple Sims to the same lot that you're at. At least this is what I've experienced during playtesting anyway. Luckily, as far as I'm aware, there aren't many lots like this in the game, so this is one of those rare instances. There is a mod that I normally use for this lot, which I'll leave a link for in the description if you want to use mods within your game, so you can check it out as well on the original creator site. It's called the Venue Changes mod, and this mod basically allows you to change any lot that you wouldn't normally be able to edit into any lot of your choosing. So for example, currently this lot is locked to a special lot type called a central park. However, with the mod installed, I've been able to update this lot into a park, which means more Sims will visit and use the items on the lot. So just talking back about the build again now, we're just working on the foliage area, adding in a lot of bushes, a lot of trees, a lot of flowers, just to try and get this area looking as pretty as I can. I've also added in a few more bins around the area, as well as a few decorative lampposts with those flowers on as well. So a good tip that I've got for trying to make foliage as realistic as I can in the game, obviously I'm not an expert in this area whatsoever, but I find that if you do a mixture of rocks and foliage at the same time and just pop them in little clumps, especially alongside paths and things like that, it gives a cute little realistic feel to your paths, and also it just fills in that little bit of extra space that you've got sometimes. So just working on the fences around the outside of the play area there, just to try and keep that area a little bit more detained. And also I've just changed the terrain paint there into a sort of bark type terrain, as I thought that suited it a little bit better than like mud or soil or grass, because obviously it's going to be trodden on a lot by the children that play in there. So moving on now, I'm just filling up this little area next to the gazebo. I thought it'd be so cute to add in a little garden area. This will especially be cute if you use clubs, which come alongside the Sims 4 Get Together pack, and you can create a little gardening club there with your Sims, especially if your Sim enjoys to garden in their own homes. They can come out and do it with other Sims that have the same interests, which I think is lovely. So if you have the expansion pack, the Sims 4 Get Together, this pack actually adds clubs into the game, and like I mentioned, this is a really great feature for your Sims to get out and about and meeting up with other Sims who have the same interests as them. For example, there's a pre-made club called the Garden Gnomes, and this club and its members are really into gardening and being out in nature. So for certain clubs, you have to have requirements you have to meet in order to be able to join, like certain skill points or maybe even a certain age. However, with the garden gnomes, this club is completely open to everyone, and the majority of activities include tending to gardens, looking for frogs and fishing, so this type of club will be perfect in this area. Now that this lot is also classed as a park alongside that mod that I mentioned earlier, I can set my club's hangout area to be this park, and that means whenever a club gathering is started, all of the Sims in the club will meet at this area. So that's a really cool feature to have in the game if you're interested in purchasing that expansion pack. So as you can see, just moving on to the Gazebo Quarter again and just adding in some little picnic blankets and some grills. I also took out a lot of clutter objects, such as little packs of ketchup, plates and bottles, tissues and other little bits and pieces, just to make that area look a little bit more realistic. I also added the water bucket in there, so that's for your Sims to be able to play with water balloons, and I also believe it changes in the winter months to a snowball fight. Obviously you will need the Sims 4 expansion pack for seasons if you'd like to have that included in your game. So just adding in a few planters there, as you could see, just along the edges of those paths, just to fill in that little bit of space. We've moved back into the centre of the park again now. You will notice that I do tend to move about a lot in my builds. I can't seem to focus on one area at a time at the moment. I am working on it. But I tend to have lots of ideas sort of flitting through my head at the same time, so I will sort of bounce from one area to the next when I get an idea. So the idea I'm working on here is for a few stores in which your Sims can actually run their own stores and sell the items that they make at home using their certain skills. For example, here you could sell paintings, you could sell woodworking sculptures, you can sell flower bouquets if you have certain packs, and you open up the store. You can actually do the same thing on your home lot as well. You can open up the store and Sims will come along and they'll look at the items that you're selling and, you know, potentially purchase one of those items to take home with them. So I'm just bringing out a lot of different clutter objects that I thought might fit well into this area. A lot of plastic tubs, storage tubs, magazines, and lots of different crafty bits and pieces to make it look like these items have been, you know, set up to help the Sims run their store throughout the day. So those stores will stay there. So your Sims can open up a store whenever they like, no matter what time of day it is. Obviously, certain times of day more Sims are available than others, so you'll have to sort of work out which times are best for your Sims to sell the most items. So I'm just going to move out here a little bit, and you can see another bird's eye shot there of the park and all the different terrain layers that it's got there. I was just adding in a few more trees to fill in a bit more space and also to make this area a little bit more green and luscious. So in that corner there, you might have just seen that I added in a musician's stand. If your Sim is well rehearsed in their guitar or comedian skill, they can actually use that item there and they can perform for other Sims in the area and potentially get tips for how well their performance is going and how much Sims enjoy the performance that your Sims are putting on. So I thought that was quite a nice activity to pop in there. In this final quarter, I'm adding in a area for your pets to play in, and this is actually a training ground for your dogs. Again, dogs are part of an additional expansion pack called Cats and Dogs. This area includes tunnels, poles to weave in and out of, a seesaw type object that's sort of attached to the ground rather than moving, a couple of platforms and also rings for your Sim dogs to jump through. In this area, I also added another stand for your Sims to grab some food and drinks from, a few benches with some umbrellas, and a few dog and cat bowls as well, so your pets can keep all of their needs up. Just adding in some more foliage there. I wanted to try and keep the foliage as consistent as I could throughout this build. I didn't want areas that looked really full of plants and flowers and then other areas that were completely empty. I also added some grass wisps alongside some of the play equipment to make it look as though the equipment had maybe been there for a little while and nature was starting to take over a little more. And the same with those flowers and some more bushes to finish that area off. Here's the benches with those umbrellas, and I also popped in a few gates on both sides along with some signs for this area. I sort of wanted to keep it separate from the rest of the park because obviously in real life parks, most areas are sort of gated off to make sure your pets don't run around the entire area. So I tried to keep that as realistic as I possibly could. There's the other side with those other gates going in. Those posts that I use are a debug item, so you can access those as a separate menu from the catalogue. So adding in an additional fence on the middle terrain layer, I felt even though the hedges were there, it seemed a little bit unfinished, so I used a stone type fence to add around all the exposed edges of the terrain, and I just felt like this finished off this area a little bit more. Moving back over to the children's play area, I had a sudden idea to add in a sand pit, as I remember you can actually use the sand terrain paint to create sand pits. So in live mode, once you've placed this terrain down, you can actually direct your Sims to build sand sculptures, and I just thought this was a great additional activity to pop in here. I've also lowered the terrain paint's opacity a little bit around the edges, and this just makes it look as though the sand has escaped along the edges of the pit where the children have been maybe throwing the sand around, or where they've been running in and out of the sand pit a lot. Adding in a few more toys such as those buckets and spades, and also a few more items for toddlers to use such as those building blocks and stack shapes. So just moving back over to the pond area and just filling in some of those empty spaces with a few more bushes, a few more plants, a little bit of extra terrain paint. I also added in a fishing sign here, so you can actually ask your Sims to fish in here and they should be able to collect fish as there are fish spawners. I've added in a few benches just around the outside. Maybe you've got a couple of elderly Sims who just want to have a little bit of a sit down watching over the pond. So I'm going to start wrapping up this voiceover here. You can download this lot off the Sims 4 in-game gallery. You can either search CozySimsYT in the username drop down, or if you search the hashtags CozySims or CozySimsYT, you'll be able to download this lot as well. Like I said, you will need the mod that I've noted in the description of the video in order to use this lot the way it's intended, but if that doesn't bother you too much, you can still download and use the old lot settings as normal. Thank you so much for watching this video, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone!